Hello. Hello everyone. So now today we would start the second part of our first chapter, that is the last lesson. So before we continue our today's session, I just want you to have a quick revision. Quick revision in the sense you should know where the story had reached. Okay, so we came to know that this chapter is concerning about a country called France, and it's very a nice and intriguing chapter, by the way. So during last few minutes of our previous video, we came to know that today would be the last day of classes in French, because from tomorrow onwards new masters would come and they would be teaching students in a language that they love, that is in German language. So this story is kind of a heartbroken, people would be heartbroken because all these things are going on. And why they would be learning everything in German? Because German had invaded two of the counties of France, named Lorraine and Alsace. I'm just giving you 2 minutes just for the quick recapitulation. And after a few minutes we shall be moving forward with our chapter. I think we might finish the chapter in this session. We might, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Just have an eye. Make sure your textbook is open, okay? Your textbook is open. And remember, okay, you have to remember the name of the writer and the name of the chapter. Here our name of the chapter is The Last Lesson, and it's written by Alphonse Daudet. That's the actual pronunciation of his name in English, okay? Alphonse Daudet. And to remember the name of any author, it's mandatory to pronounce the word correctly, because if you do not pronounce the word correctly, then it would be very hard to remember. Or I can make you remember this name in one more way. You can see A. The first name of our writer starts with A. That is A as an apple or A as an alpha. So you see the name is similar to one of the types of the mangoes. Okay, like in Mumbai that is called Alfonso. Apre apus kiene, something like that. But in English that word is pronounced as Alfonso. Okay, but his name is pronounced as Alphonse Daudet. But you can just connect it and you can remember in this way. Okay, make sure it's mandatory, okay? It is mandatory to write the name of the chapter and the name of the writer. Without it, do not start any of your answers. Now, without wasting any time, let us start our chapter. Just pay attention. I would just reread the last paragraph so that we would know where we were. While I was considering about it all, M. Hamel mounted his chair and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Lorraine and Alsace. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." This was the last paragraph. Now let us move forward. What a thunderclap these words were to me. Thunderclap means those people were quite astonished. Okay, they were, you can even say that they were quite surprised, like suddenly what happened to our school. So that is the meaning of this phrase. Okay, what a thunderclap these words were to me. Oh, the wretches. That was what they had put up at the town hall. So now our writer, when he was going to school, we had seen yesterday that there were two people out there. One person was talking and another one was his apprentice. So they were giving this news to the civilians outside. Okay, so the wretches here is they might have set up a small podium like where the speaker can stand up and speak up the news. So that is the reason why those people were there and they were conveying this news to the civilian. Now our author understood. My last French lesson. Why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. See, now our writer is feeling so sad that he had done few stupid things before. Okay, because he was never pushing himself to learn French properly as a language, as his academic subject. He was not interested to learn. But now suddenly, instead of going to school, he was going to all the things like this. It is clearly mentioned, you see, for seeking bird's egg. He might be, climbing the trees to get the eggs of the birds, or going sliding on the Saar. You can consider Saar as one of the mountains. Those people, I think out there, they have ice, so they love skiing. Okay, so things like that. In the short, he is realizing that how stupid he was not to learn French, and apart from that, he was doing his own extracurricular activities which are useless. Useless, that those what teacher would be saying to him, but for him it's a total fun. Now let us move forward. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints were old friends now that I couldn't give up. See, now he is realizing that how beautiful the French language is, and he is remembering all the saints or monks. Pardon me. And M. Hamel too. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. See, now if these kind of things happen, then obviously for a student like our author, he would be missing everything in the school. Okay, for an example, it is mentioned here, how can he forget his beloved teacher M. Hamel? Now, at the first instant, we might be having the feel that he is a very rude teacher. He keeps on scolding students, but at this hour, on this particular moment, he is realizing that how bad this thing is. He would be missing his beloved teacher M. Hamel, and he's forgetting all the rude things about him. For an example, he does not speak well. He does not speak well in the sense means he keeps on using strong words against him. So that's the meaning, what it is conveyed here. In short, he is realizing that what is now is the perfect situation, okay, because things are about to happen much worse. Poor man. It was in honor of his last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. Now we can understand. So you have to remember that the clothes that he had put on, that what were the types of clothes he had put on? We have to remember. It was a green coat, he was wearing a frilled shirt, and he was wearing a black silk hat. And usually that kind of appearance he used to wear during Sundays, or when there is a prize distribution, or you can say that during a special occasion. During a special occasion he used to wear that dress. But now, as it is the last lesson of French, he had put on his Sunday clothes. You have to remember this, it's very important. Now let us move further. Now we can even understand why villagers were sitting at the back benches, because before it was quite clear that all the benches in the classroom, they were filled. There were no vacant seats. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service, and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. So it's just like they were paying respect to M. Hamel, because he is working in that school since last 40 years. You can imagine the situation of him. This kind of situation, if it happens in someone's life, then it's quite disaster, because you can imagine like 40 years of a government employee. He worked in a school, okay, all these 40 years he had worked faithfully, and suddenly this thing happens and he is fired from the school. So I think he would not be even getting the pension, or I don't know anything about that, in short. So these kind of situations are kind of very dangerous, okay? So life can take unexpected turns. We never know about the future, what can happen. You can imagine the situation now. You people were planning for vacation. Now you see you got a very long vacation, and I hope you are making a good usage of the time, and you are not wasting your precious time. Remember to not to waste your time. Let us move further. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. So in short, he might have mucked up the rules of participles, and he was planning to speak up everything like a parrot, but unfortunately he got stuck at the first word, and he was not feeling good at that moment of time, and he was not even able to face the teacher, as it is clearly mentioned that his face was towards the surface. Okay, he was not looking at the teacher. Okay, and he was not daring to look up, as it is clearly mentioned in the paragraph. Now let us move further. I heard M. Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we have come out. Ah, that's the great trouble with Elsie. She puts off learning till tomorrow. It's just like this, for an example, this video is uploaded. So there would be few students who would be saying that, okay, no problem, I would be seeing this video tomorrow, and you know that tomorrow never comes, correct? Now let's move further. Now those fellas out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? Okay, remember, this is very nice. But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reapproach ourselves with. Okay, means like still there is some time you can try. You would be better at French. Okay, now actually this you can understand in this way. This our writer, I think he's a Frenchman. Okay, so Frenchman can speak French very well. Okay, no doubt in that, but there would be problem in writing. Okay, it's just like we are able to speak fluent Gujarati, but it doesn't mean that we would be able to write Gujarati very well. Remember that. Okay, for that we have to learn the language. Okay, we have to learn whichever language, be our mother tongue or whatever the language is, we have to learn it, and then only it's possible. Now let us move further. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money, and I have been to blame too. Now you see this, our teacher is just saying the correct thing, what's wrong with our little author. The only problem is like the parents were not interested him to learn, so parents might be giving him work in the farm and he would be working in the farm. Okay, and he's not just saying that. Apart from him, what he's saying, he's also adding that even he is to blame. Means our teacher M. Hamel, he's saying that, so you can see the change in the behavior, okay, of the teacher. And I've been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So you see, this kind of situation usually happens in government school. Okay, actually I don't know whether this is a government school or not, but this kind of situation here you can clearly see in government school. Like for an instance, if a teacher wants to go somewhere, he might give holiday to students, okay, or he might be giving some household chores to the students. So these kind of things are there. Okay, so now let us see what happens. According to my point of view, what I think is usually the M. Hamel is regretting all these things. What he is doing actually, he is regretting, since this is the last day. Okay, so he would not be coming to school tomorrow. Then from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language. in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. You see, actually, the French is one of the most beautiful languages in the world. French is the one of the most beautiful languages in the world. You have to consider that. So now they are just chatting up, like you see, it was much better with the French. Now even I don't know how those people would be reacting, or those students would be reacting when they would be learning everything in German. You can just imagine the situation. Okay, it's okay. So they are just telling or they are discussing that we should keep the French language amongst us. They can speak it as they are in France. Okay, so they are trying to pay respect to the French language. Okay, then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. Okay, as it is the last lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. So now he is realizing that the French language, actually the grammar part in that language, and that language seemed very easy to our author. But however, you can use the word unfortunately, this would be the last day. From tomorrow onwards, they would be learning everything in German. Let us move further. Now I'm just giving you 2 minutes, just have a glance or just revise everything in your head. What's the story so far? Okay, just move further. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully, and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away, and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. Okay, so now, as is the last lesson, I don't know what happened to our writer. He suddenly thinks that the French language is the easiest language in the world. Okay, so these are the feelings normally people would have, if it's the last day of the lesson in their mother tongue. Let's move further. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. France also, France also. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the road at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. Yes, you can imagine the situation. Once the grammar's lecture was over, then another lecture or another topic our teacher would be making students to understand, and that was the writing section. Which section it was? It was the writing section. So you can see that there in a beautiful round hand. Beautiful round hand means the letters were written in cursive writing. Okay, just like the way I have written on the board the name of the chapter, just like that. That's called round hand. Okay, it's one of the phrase. It can be asked in multiple choice questions. Round hand. Okay, it means cursive handwriting. And what it was written, France Allsec, France Allsec. Okay, so I think this is a feeling of a patriotism. This is a feeling of patriotism. Okay, and you can see that they were looking like the flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. There was a pin drop silence. No one was talking. No one was literally talking. It was completely silence. Okay, the only sound that they were able to hear was the scratching of the pen on the paper. So I would be saying that here a figure of speech that is used is onomatopoeia, since the sound is described here. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French too. On the roof, the pigeon cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Okay, so you can see that our author is quite scared of these people. Okay, German. Actually, they are very strict. Remember Adolf Hitler. Whenever the German comes, we can, or we can imagine how those people can be. Okay, very strict. Okay, and not allowing any languages to speak apart from mother tongue. Okay, so just have a glance on it. So he's even wondering that they would be making even pigeons to coo in German. Okay. Just have an eye on it. I think I would be completing the chapter in this part. Okay, just I'm giving you 2 minutes, just have an eye on it. Now let's just move further. Okay. Now whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamer sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy. For 40 years he had been there in the same place, with the garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. So it's clearly written here that the garden is just right in front of the school's classroom, as this kind of thing had came during the time when our author was going to school, and it was printed in the chapter that he had reached the garden. Okay, so that garden refers to the garden that is at the front of the classroom. Now let us move further. Okay, only the desk and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hope vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. Okay. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day. Okay, so even his sister is in the picture. They are packing their luggage and they would be leaving the country by tomorrow. So you see, this kind of situation had happened during, like in 1947, I think 1947, during the partition, India and Pakistan. So the rules at that time were people who want to live in Pakistan, they can live in Pakistan. People who want to live in India, they can live in India. But there were many people who had migrated from Pakistan to India, from India to Pakistan. So this situation is same like that, okay? So in our case, in the history of our country, this kind of thing had happened in 1947, okay? You might be aware about these whole situations. So the same situation is here. These people would not be living in this county or in the district or in the country probably, as it is written here. They have to change the country. So they would be going out of the country. So they are packing their things as it is clearly written. Now let's move further. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba bee bee boo boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he, too, was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remember it, that last lesson. Okay, can imagine, so all the emotions would be coming out of the people, okay, and after this they would not be knowing when they would be meeting up all together. So it's a kind of a very sad situation. All at once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus. At the same moment the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamel stood up, very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. Okay, so what happened actually, the teacher got up on the chair. The teacher got up on the chair. My friend, said he, I, but something choked him. He could not go on. He was not able to speak. He was not able to speak. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could. And he writes one phrase, Vive la France. Okay, so it means long live the France. Okay, so that's what he had written in French. Okay, Vive la France. That is the way it is pronounced in the French language. Okay, Vive la France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, you may go. Okay. So finally, our teacher told to the classroom that the class is dismissed. So that is the end of our first chapter. Now I would be telling you to write the question and answers in your book, in your copy of English, and make sure do not print it. Okay, do not be a printing machine and just print it from a reference book or online material. Up to certain extent you can consider that it is all right. Okay, but I would, as I had told you in the previous video, find out the answers, find out the in-text questions answers from the chapter, just like comprehension. Okay, and write it in your copy. Thank you.